Today we've got a great story of revenge, getting a racist Karen's business shut down. We'll get to that in a bit, but first, I unleashed the monster of bureaucracy upon my neighbor and watched it destroy him. This is a story of how patience is key and how letting someone else get revenge for you is by far easier than doing it yourself. The setup: I live in one of those doubled up houses where they build two houses adjacent to each other with a mirrored layout. So we share a wall but otherwise are completely separate. For years, the house next to me belonged to a nice old lady who you never really noticed or had any trouble with. When she died, the house was resold and the troubles began. The target is someone who I'll refer to as Jack Sparrow for reasons that I'll become clear later. Jack owns a sizable construction business, does some real estate on the side. He buys the house and rents it to a bunch of foreign construction workers that work for his business. I say foreign because it's relevant to the story. There are rumors Jack is doing some shady stuff to have these work for him dirt cheap, by claiming that they're national workers in their native country and paying them according to that wage, and the not much higher minimum wage of my country. Not exactly on the up and up, possibly unreported labor as well. Anyways, he stuffs 4 to 6 of these in said house for them to live while they work here. Now, I don't have anything against foreign construction workers, but these guys living next door have 2 traits that are very problematic. They are extremely loud, and they do not give a care about anyone else. We're talking non-stop music and partying starting Thursday evening throughout the entire weekend, until they leave at 5 a.m. Monday morning to go to work. Seriously, I don't know how or when they sleep. It is literally non-stop. We're talking, I'm wearing headphones but still cannot hear my own sound over their music loud, since it would appear that they've designated the living room, adjacent to the shared wall, as the party room where the fun happens. At first, I do the neighborly thing and just suck it up, thinking it's just one party, just one weekend. After the 3rd one in a row, I go over and ask them to turn it down. Since, night disturbance, it's technically illegal to blast the music this loud, hearable on the street and across the street by my other neighbors who have also complained. I'm met with a half-hearted, "So sorry, we'll fix." Except nothing changes. I go over several more times, each time angrier, each time met with, "But it's not loud. If I can hear your music in my own house, over my own TV and music, I would say that it is in fact too loud." I contact Jack since he's their landlord and explain the situation, after which I met with an abrupt, "Sorry, not my freaking problem." Basically, Jack told me to get bent. So I involve police and call them every time things get out of hand. After about a dozen calls, sometimes even twice in the same night, it is clear that even regular police interference doesn't help the situation. I should mention that I'm a lawyer, so I know what the next legal steps are. I also know that other than a token paper from a judge saying their music is too loud, I'm not really going to get anything. Things would, like they already sometimes had, become a cat and mouse game, where they would blast their music extremely loud to piss me off or to wake me up for a few brief moments, so that by the time I could get proof or police show up, there would be no music. I'm deadlocked, with my only further option being pretty useless and a waste of time. At this point, I'm biding my time and just waiting till something changes. I'm not saying that I condone people who bludgeon their neighbor to death with a rusty pipe, but I do somewhat understand what would drive someone to that point. The mistake. One day, I'm at home, and I notice quite a lot of ruckus next door, more so than usual. Suddenly, I see through my garden window that a wall is being partially torn down. You see, sometime over the years, the neighbors had built a small adjacent side building adjoining the main house. It was right on the border between us, and when the gardens were being re-fenced, the wall was used as a divider to save on fencing. Said wall was now in the process of having its top part ripped off by a crane. I was not informed of any of this, which, while not technically being needed, would have been the nice thing to do. I go take a walk so I can look at what we're doing, and see that they've torn down the entire side building. The remaining wall between our gardens is the only part that's been kept intact, and even then, not the top part. Being a lawyer, and specifically a construction/permit lawyer, I know 2 things. Crap like this is not allowed without a pre-approved permit from the city, There is no way in heck they have said permit, as I would have seen the application for it. I regularly have to check the online, publicly accessible by everyone, application to see what permits are being applied for my job. And when I do, I tend to look over to my own area, just so I can keep up with what's being planned in my area. This is it, the moment I've been waiting for. The situation has changed, and the time has come to exact revenge. A quick email sent to the municipal authorities lets me do my civic duty of reporting a potential crime. The fact that someone is building or demolishing crap without a permit. Since this is a simple report, no response happens since I'm not an official victim or anything yet. Since no further construction happens for a few days and everything was removed, I assume that was that, and they would only tear down the side structure since it was starting to fall apart due to age. The neighbors have moved all of their stuff that was in said building onto their lawn and haphazardly covered it with a tarp. The next week, more construction materials are being delivered and construction starts. I send a new email to the city services with new pictures saying that apparently there's more planned and that I hope they undertake the appropriate action. Instant response less than an hour later. They'd called Jack for the first time to inform him that what he was doing required a permit, and he had assured them that he didn't know that. BS, he's in construction. Of course he knows, and that he would stop construction and request a permit. They called him again after my email, reprimanded him for not following his earlier promise, and he said again that he would shut it down. I happened to be working from home that day and had to stop myself from waving to the construction crew as they left. Later that day, I get an angry phone call from Jack who accuses me of reporting him and that I would be sorry. He would come after me for damages for his delays. I respectfully inform him that even if I did report him, reports are in my name but not published and anonymized in later files. I wouldn't have done anything wrong because from the looks of it, he didn't have a permit and should have known that before he started working illegally without one. I end the call before I start to sound too happy with things. Jack has, at this point, no idea what I've initiated with this. He is Jack Sparrow, and I've just rung the bell that awakens the Kraken that will destroy him. He just doesn't know it yet. The Kraken. You see, there is a good reason why most people consult an expert or a lawyer when they want to apply for a permit. The rules involved are so convoluted and needlessly complex that navigating them as a non-professional is extremely hard and time-consuming, and a single mistake can torpedo your entire case, forcing you to do it all over. I have killed entire projects and have seen clients' projects killed by pointing out that on page 127, section 35(1)(a), something was left blank that should have been answered. I did some digging and found out that the previous owners of the houses had actually consulted each other about the side building and agreed on the making of the wall, part of the divider between their gardens. So much so that they shared the costs of it and the ownership. That wall that he destroyed part of, it was also my wall, which of course means I'm entitled to damages, but that's not the important part. The important part is that he needs my permission to do anything to that wall. So when he applied for a permit a few weeks later, added bonus, rowdy neighbor stuff is still out in the open, covered by just a tarp since they expected this to be a quick smash and replace job that would take a few weeks at the most. I went to the city center and looked at the application. Noticed that they were planning to do some stuff to said wall that I own 50% of. So I filed a complaint, following proper procedure about the permit, namely that even if granted, it could never be executed, since Jack needed permission from me in regards to the wall, and he didn't have it, nor was I intending to grant it. This should kill his permit, since permits cannot be granted if you know in advance they cannot be realized. No sense granting a permit to build a certain kind of house when you know they're never actually going to build it. Now, Jack was a bit of a smooth talker and, as a construction entrepreneur, had his connections. And permits are a political decision here just as much as a legal one. So despite a 100% correct legal objection that should have killed his permit, it went through. He actually called me about it to gloat a little. No worry, one can appeal a permit in my country. The only requirement is that you pay a €100 fee, which I gladly paid. The appeal instance is a subnational instance and does not care one bit about Jack's political ties or the half-hearted BS that the city officials wrote to justify granting the permit in spite of the concerns I raised. They terminate his permit without any hesitation on the aforementioned legal grounds. Jack sees his permit blocked until he fixes the issue, which he can't, because I'm not really inclined to agree with his plans for our wall, you see. At this point, going through 2 lengthy procedures, it's been over 7 months. The neighbors have had an unfinished construction project in their yard the entire time, forced to store their stuff elsewhere. Something that was always supposed to be a temporary thing for a few weeks while we build turned into something that was taking months with no end in sight. But wait, there's more. The above was the administrative part of the matter, him getting the permit. Now, doing construction work without a permit is also a criminal offense. And of course, my report got passed around to the appropriate instances, so now Jack was also the subject of a criminal procedure for construction offense. Not only did he risk fines and jail time, he was a construction business and used his own construction business for the work he did on the property. So his company was also on the hook. And one of the sentences that can be given in these types of crimes is to be prohibited to do construction or construction-related activity as a business, either permanently or temporarily. Not only was he personally on the line, his entire business was as well. During this debacle, Jack tried to sell the property. This didn't really go too well because of a few reasons. One, the property was inflicted with an illegal situation. The demolished side building was torn down illegally, and until the legal status was resolved, it would stick to the property, which tends to kill property value quite a bit, since nobody wants to buy something that they'll have to spend time and money on to make legal again by either rebuilding the torn down building or getting a regularization permit for it. Made even worse by the fact that he applied for said permit and had it denied, so he couldn't even claim that said permit would be super easy to get. Secondly, is Jack never intended to sell the property in its current state. What he, as I know now, has done in the past is buy cheap old houses like the one next to me. He put some of his crew in it who can't complain about the subpar accommodation. They thrash the place because they don't care and he lets them. Then when the place is done, he tears it down and sells it to a developer, or develops it himself. However, due to his construction crime and the accompanying status for the property, Step 2 wasn't an option. He couldn't renovate it the way he needed it to be. Small renovations would not be enough, because covering the crime was always a requirement in any permit he would request for the building, and because of me, he couldn't cover it. Couldn't sell it either because the place was trashed, and any developer looking at it would dip out when they realized there was a construction issue and a vocal neighbor who would oppose anything big that they would try to do there. Lots of easier properties to develop than that one. In conclusion, anyway, this is where we are today. Jack is staring down the barrel of a criminal court procedure that's about to happen where he's risking his business and livelihood. His existing projects also gather special attention from city services now, since he's now outed to them as someone who cuts corners on permits and regulations. He can't really sell the property unless he cuts a massive loss, since in its current state it is absolutely trashed. He can't develop it or sell to a developer because all development plans involve the adjoining wall, which he can't use in big ways unless he gets my permission. The rowdy neighbors are stuck living in a smaller house than what they had, in a place that they trashed but cannot be really renovated or fixed in the major way that it needs. They've quieted down a lot, possibly because Jack blames them for his current situation, which isn't wrong, I suppose. I have awakened the Kraken and set it off on Jack Sparrow, and it utterly ruined him. And the best part is that I had to do very little to do it. All I really did was nudge the abomination that is municipal bureaucracy and point it in his direction, and they did the rest. I could tell you that he called me to complain and even beg about letting him use the wall the way he needs it to, so that he can get on with his business and fix the issues and use them to show his good faith in court in the criminal procedure. That he was losing money and customers over this and was in danger of losing his entire business, and that I then smugly replied with, "Not my freaking problem." But he didn't. So for now, we'll just have to imagine that he did. This guy honestly sounds pretty high up there on the bad neighbors list. Especially after gloating, I can only imagine how satisfying it is to stop them in their tracks. Our next story is, half-brothers threatened to sue me over $16,000. It cost them $158,000 and possibly their parents' marriage. When I, 25-year-old female, was 3, my grandparents passed away. They set up a savings account in my name. The account was meant to be accessed by me when I was 21. At that point, it contained just over $300,000. My grandparents left me a letter saying that they would like me to share the money fairly with any other Smith-Jones children, meaning my full siblings. Dad's a Smith, Mom's a Jones. By fairly, they meant that they wanted me to assess the situation and judge for myself what's fair. I never had full siblings, but I have 2 half-brothers, Mac and Joe Smith, who are dad and stepmom's kids. Due to the specific wording my grandparents used, I legally never had to give Mac or Joey any money. However, I see Mac and Joe as my brother, and as the money came from our grandparents, I felt that the fairest thing would be to assign each of us $100,000, so we all got equal-sized lump sums. And I figured that when Mac, the youngest, turned 21 and took his $100,000, we could split any remaining money. When I turned 21, Dad suggested I buy a house with my $100,000. I found a place I loved, but it was $130,000 and I couldn't get a mortgage. So Dad said that I should borrow $30,000 from the account. I did, figuring I could pay it back before my brothers turned 21, and I've been repaying it. The account should be at $208,000 right now, but due to me withdrawing and then repaying that money, it's at $195,000, so I still owe $13,000. Joe turned 21 recently, and as I was giving him his $100,000, Joe noticed that there was less in the account than there should be. I explained and said that I was going to put it all back before Mac, now 19, turns 21. Joe told Mac, and both boys said I stole from them and owed them the full $13,000 back, plus $3,000 of interest that they felt they would have gotten, and they wanted it all paid by this summer, which gave me less than 6 months to bring the account up to $211,000. I said I'd do it, but over 2 years as planned. The boys then wrote up a contract to that effect. I went to sign it until I saw that it said 6 months to pay it all back. I wouldn't sign it as we agreed on 2 years. They said I should figure it out as they were entitled to that money and would be seeking legal advice. Later that day, I got an email, clearly written by them, saying that they intend to sue me for the $16,000 plus whatever is currently in the account, and additional damages and emotional distress on top of that. At this point in time, I'd given Joe about $50,000 of his $100,000 because he wanted it in installments. I responded that legally, they were never entitled to any of it, and given their attitudes, I'd say they already received an amount that seemed fair. So that $50,000 was all they were getting. I then got a barrage of texts, calls, and emails yelling at me for going back on our deal. I blocked them. They then took to social media, saying that I was trying to screw them out of their inheritance and rallying our extended family into harassing me over this. And it mostly worked as a lot of people messaged me. However, I got a message from this guy called Chris Smith. Chris said he was 27 and claimed to be my half-brother. I had never met him before, but he sent me photos of him as a kid with our dad, grandparents, and me. He showed me that he also had an account with $150,000 in it and a scan of a letter from our grandparents, saying this money was meant to be shared fairly among Dad's illegitimate children. Chris also told me that we have another half-sibling who's 18. He'd been looking for me for a while, but only found me when Dad shared Joe's post, which had me tagged. We checked with the solicitor to make sure, and as the boys are legitimate, they aren't entitled to anything in Chris's illegitimate kid fund. And as they're my half-siblings, they aren't entitled to anything in my Smith-Jones kids fund. I sent the boys a letter formally telling them to back off, stop posting about me online, and enjoy the $50,000 because it's all they're getting. The day they received the letter, Chris got a PM from Dad asking if the boys can have some of Chris's fund. Chris also said no and told Dad that we'd met. I told Mac and Joe about Chris and our other half-sibling, with Chris's permission. So it looks like my grandparents, knowing about Chris before they passed, set up 2 funds. One for the kids Dad had with my mother, who was still his wife when they passed, and one for children born out of Dad's affairs. Presumably to make sure no one tried to screw anyone else over out of hurt feelings. I'm getting a lot of crap, but holding firm on my decision. The boys have realized that I won't back down on this, and it sounds like I've caused a schism at their house, as Joe has all the money and no intention of sharing, so Mac is now feeling twice as screwed. Plus, stepmom apparently didn't know about the other half-siblings or that my half-sister was born after she and dad got married, and she's made dad move into a hotel. It sounds like dad's looking for a long-term living arrangement outside of the family home because it looks like she's not letting him move back in. Dad is begging me to reconsider, but honestly, I'm done with all of them except Chris and my sister. Isn't it crazy how money can push you farther away from family members and even closer to ones you hadn't even known existed? Our next story is racist Karen calls the cops on my cousin, so I get her business closed down. Background: my cousin, 23-year-old female, recently opened up her own salon. From a young age, she taught herself how to thread and wax eyebrows and developed an interest in makeup and hair. Everyone in our extended family would go to her before events and on a monthly basis for their threading, waxing, hair, and makeup needs. In 2020, she had a full-time job, non-salon related, but decided to renovate the basement of her home to create a small salon space. She now spends her free time taking clients in her at-home salon, and there's nothing but great reviews. Her sister helped with the renovations and now helps her with marketing the business, social media, community pages, and I help with the finances, budgeting, price setting. We all support her and are really proud of her. The salon is our baby. At the time of writing this, we're now in the middle of a pandemic, and this greatly affected her salon business. As a result, she implemented safety measures, and our small team made sure to keep up with COVID regulations in our city. This included having one customer inside at a time, doing temperature checks, making masks and face shields and gloves mandatory, wiping down the salon after each client, etc. Also, when our city was in lockdown, the salon was closed as it's not an essential service. The incident: our city is once again in lockdown since the end of December to the end of January. The salon's been closed since the lockdown began. The salon's social media pages had been updated to let the current clientele know that the salon is closed. Now comes the Karen. Karen sees a community post from October detailing a discount that the salon was having on a certain package we offer. She comments on the post saying that she can't believe the salon is open in the middle of a lockdown when her salon has to be closed. This is important for later. Karen fails to notice that this post was made in October, when salons were allowed to operate as long as they followed safety regulations. Karen doesn't bother checking more recent posts indicating that the salon was closed. My cousin doesn't see her reply at this time. The next day, 2 police officers show up in my cousin's door while she's at a doctor's appointment. The officers ask for my cousin, and my aunt lets them know that she's not home right now. My aunt doesn't speak English very well and lets the officers know that she would call my cousin and ask her to come home. Maybe the officers didn't believe her, but they insisted on coming inside the home. My aunt had already called my cousin as she was worried. My cousin asked what it was about, but my aunt didn't know. My cousin then asked if they had a warrant for anything. When she found out they didn't, she told her mom to not let them come inside and that she would be there in about 20 minutes. My cousin began driving home when my aunt called her to let her know that they simply left. Hearing this, my cousin was less worried and decided to go grocery shopping as planned before heading home. Turns out the officers came back half an hour later and once again demanded to see my cousin. My aunt called my cousin again and asked her to come home, but in the 20 minutes she took to come home, the officers were gone. They had left a card and asked her to call back. My cousin managed to get a hold of the officers and was told that someone had reported their business. They claimed that she was operating during the lockdown and they had proof. My cousin knew this wasn't true as the salon had been closed for quite a while. By now, my cousin had seen the comment from earlier and mentioned that she knew exactly what their so-called proof was, but the post in question was from October. My cousin was very upset as this post was not even close to being actual evidence of her operating now in January. She was also very upset that they insisted on coming inside the house with no cause or warrant when they could clearly see that my aunt does not understand the language very well. At the end of the conversation, the police officer apologized to my cousin, and we thought that would be the end of it. You must be wondering how we know that Karen was the one who called the cops? Well, she told us. The next day, my cousin received a message she realized was from the woman who commented on the post. Karen decided to pretend like she's a customer. She said, "Can I book an appointment?" My cousin says, "Hey love, we're currently closed due to the lockdown. Once the lockdown's over, we'll be more than happy to book you in." She says, "Oh, my girlfriend was there yesterday. My apologies." My cousin says, "You must have gotten the date wrong. The salon's not taking clients until the lockdown's over. Thank you." She says, "No problem, but I didn't get the date wrong. I also know the police came due to you being open. Take care." My cousin says, "I'm not going to sit here and entertain your boring life. Maybe for a change, you can find another hobby rather than spreading lies and wasting people's time, including the police's time, or even better, find an actual job. Have a good night." She says, "I own my own spa that's closed as yours should be. My mom is the one who called the cops. You're not entertaining me at all. Go back to your own country instead of screwing with ours." My cousin decided to block her at this point. My cousin was happy this was all over. Her sister and I were still outraged at the racist comment and how someone could make up lies about a small business that led to the cops terrifying my aunt. When my cousin told me about Karen, the fact that she had her own spa really stood out. I did some digging. Revenge. Turns out Karen runs her own spa out of her house. Doing some more snooping, I found reviews from her clients on her business page that were posted on days that the city was under lockdown. The reviews could be from clients who received services before the lockdown and only now had a chance to write a review. To be sure, I found Karen's Instagram page. I decided to use her own trick against her. I created a new account with a generic name and followed her page so she couldn't see that I was related to my cousin. I then messaged her to ask her about the prices for her services. I said, "Hey, I love your pics. I was wondering how much you charge." She says, "Hey girl, thank you so much. What service are you after?" I said, "I'm really interested in the BB Glow facial." She says, "That's awesome. My biggest seller for sure. Normally it's $125, but it's on BOGO, so you pay for one session and get two." I said, "That's such a great deal compared to the others. When's your next available date?" She says, "Where are you located?" I can't have people come to me in lockdown, but I travel to my clients. Karen was not operating from her home location due to lockdown restrictions, but was traveling to her clients' homes, which is still against regulations. I then made up a lie about my home not having adequate space and asked her for her address so we could meet up at my friend's place somewhere between her and I's locations. She foolishly told me her address. During this time, I also tried joining other community groups that she was a part of. In one particular group, people in the community were promoting their small businesses. She had recently made a post about discounts on her services for the month of January. I immediately went online and submitted a report about her business still operating, including screenshots, her address, full name, etc. A few days passed by, and I'd forgotten to check up on it as I was busy with life again. I saw the incident report number on a sticky note I had on my desk and decided to check in. Apparently, this wasn't Karen's first offense. Karen had already been fined $750 for having a client in her home during the first lockdown in my city. After being fined, she decided to change her business model and go to the client's home instead. Now she was fined $10,000. I was still following her on Instagram, so I decided to check it out. She had gone on a rant about how she was going to do very bad things to the person who reported her. She also mentioned that she was no longer allowed to run her business. I'm not sure what type of ban the regional police put on her, but I immediately deleted the account and exited the groups I'd joined earlier. At the end of the day, Karen got what she deserved, and I fulfilled my dream of pretending to be Sherlock Holmes. Some insecure Karen that tries to tear down your own cousin must feel so satisfying to just turn it all around on them. Of course, this Karen was projecting the entire time. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy story of revenge, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.